And welcome back, everybody, to Around the Bases, episode 17. Once again, I am Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at BDintric. And as always, joined by my co-host, Mo. You can find him on Twitter at Boston_Mo. Mo, how are we doing?
We're doing well. It was unfortunate Red Sox lost this afternoon. The bullpen blew it for Drew Pomeranz, which is not a good thing to say. But other than that, ready to roll.
Yeah, I feel for you a little bit because you get to still enjoy baseball, so that's cool. That's real cool. Matt Moore got a win yesterday, so I guess that's something.
We'll talk about all of that in a little while.
Yeah, we will, but we'll kick it off with some cool stuff, some kind of articles we've been binging on here a little bit. Jeff Passan from Yahoo wrote recently that the MLB is coming out with a Players Weekend. It's kind of cool, We're all NFL fans, and they frown upon celebration, and you can't ride on your cleats and all kinds of stuff. And same with Major League Baseball. It's a strict uniform policy, all black belts and black cleats and all this stuff. But you've noticed throughout the years, now teams have like their Sunday alternate uniforms. You have the Mother's Day pinks. We just saw the Father's Day blues, and they wear them for the whole weekend. You got like the Memorial Day, the camos looks, the 4th of July, red, white, and blue, so on and so forth. But now you get Players Weekend, August 25th through 27th, and it's really cool. And it's so far, the players get to have nicknames on the back of their jerseys. This would have been great with like Big Papi. They get to have a patch, like when someone passes away or whatever, you get a patch on a jersey. They get a patch to put someone's name or initials of someone that was, inspirational growing up or in the development of their game. They get to wear different colors, bright shoes, as we see in the All-Star games. Guys come out with all kinds of crazy stuff. And we saw even in the World Baseball Classic some cool stuff there. They're negotiating different colored bats, like we've seen with the Mother's Day and Father's Days. We see in the Home Run Derby, there's a bunch of cool stuff. That one's still getting negotiated right now because I think they have to have the proper types of bats made, and that's kind of a touchy subject apparently. But it's a really cool deal because, as they keep trying to change baseball, as we've talked about many times, for kind of a negative, in our opinion, of trying to speed the game up with this kind of the stuff that doesn't really matter to the people that enjoy baseball. This kind of thing is good to bring the fans in, is what they're trying to do with the other moves. This is great because this is stuff that's going to bring kids in, bring just, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but, wives watch the Super Bowl for the ads. Well, wives are going to want to watch some of this stuff. So it'll be cool to them. It'll be different. It's just a cool thing. And to top it off, the jerseys that are worn with the nicknames are going to be auctioned off to the Youth Development Foundation. That is an organization that the Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association work together to raise money for and build for. So it's a really good deal. It's going to be a great fundraiser and kind of bring a little fun atmosphere before the last month of the baseball season. Didn't know if you had too much you wanted to bring in on that.
No, I think it's cool. I think your boy C Dick, maybe he'll put that on there. That would be really nice. I hope Xander puts X on his back or DMX or something stupid like that. It'd be interesting to see if Max Scherzer puts out like I have a sucky bullpen, or Dusty Baker, I ruined Mark Pryor's career. I'm not sure if that will completely fit on the jersey. But no, it'll be cool to see what they do, different shoes. I hope they get the bat game. I mean, I don't think that should be an issue considering, like you said, they got the pink bats, the blue bats. I mean, they should be able to figure that out. So it should be a pretty cool weekend. I mean, it's not going to bring all the young kids in because these guys have different games, but you'll get to see sort of some of the personalities, of baseball because, with the unwritten rules and and all the crap that baseball put them through, sort of like the NFL players too. You get to see maybe personalities that you don't know. Like, they interviewed Archer today on MLB Central. That guy's got a great personality, you can tell. And then just some of the, interviews they do on Intentional Talk with Millar and Rose, you get to see some of the guys that are really cool, whether they're good baseball players or not. So it'll be a fun weekend for those guys.
Yeah, definitely.
The next article we kind of went into You brought this up. So it's Ben Lindbergh article on the juice baseballs, and as we know, home runs are way up. They introduced a new ball in the second half of 2015. The MLB basically saying that it's not juice. They didn't introduce new balls. I believe the balls were made in China, and then after that they decided to make them in Costa Rica or vice versa. I may have that wrong, but either way, you get the picture. So they changed spots where they're making the baseballs. So if you look at that article, and maybe we'll tweet it out, but if you search Ben Lindbergh juice baseballs, I'm sure it'll be the first one on Google. It's a long article. It's kind of boring if you're not really into that kind of stuff. And I kind of glanced over and saw the main points that they were making. And for work, I'm a data guy, so I'm kind of into that kind of stuff, and that's why I love baseball so much. But I thought it was interesting in that graph that is right at the beginning. Even if you just look at that, I mean, it's way up. So I don't know what you got on this article, Bubba.
Yeah, and you said something there that one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up here is I've mentioned on this podcast and other podcasts I've done is for years I was anti-stat geek stuff with baseball, period. And I've really started to enjoy it. And this article is long. It can get deep. If you're not into it, it could probably put you to sleep. I get it. But it is it's very deep, but very informative and very interesting if you just take it slow and look into it, because it brings up some really interesting points that make a lot of sense. Because if you think back to the days when, we had the McGuire and Sosa, well, obviously steroids. Well, now we have the steroids policy, which is in play, and that's been pretty effective. So he points out in this process that there's no way this increase, because like you said, that graph alone shows the spike from the All-Star break of 2015 on has just been insane. Just the second half of 2015 from the first half of 2015 was the biggest variance in halves of baseball ever in home run rates, just from the introduction of the baseballs. He goes into the differences in just millimeters to centimeters of the rays and lowering of the stitching, like all kinds of things that I know will put you to sleep for certain people, but how the cores can be different when they brought these new balls from Costa Rica. It's really interesting because you can't, point it out to exit velocity because, they said the guys that were already hitting home runs, well, this doesn't help them. This is actually helping the guys that were like warning track power hitters. So you got that going for you. It's really interesting to show the increase as a whole, because also the minor league and the college guys changed balls at one time. And when they changed to a similar ball, now they make theirs in a different place. College and minor leagues share a similar baseball. When college changed their baseball, they showed a 44% increase in one season. So they showed a similar jump, and it's just to show you the juiciness, quote unquote, of the baseball. So long story short, I recommend reading it if you want to break it up and read it in a couple of days or whatever, just so you don't bore yourself. It is a really cool article. It basically breaks down that there's no way to point a finger besides it's got to be something with the baseball. Now, is it 100% sure it's the baseball? No, but they bought baseballs from pre-All-Star 215 to after, tested them all independently, all kinds of cool stuff. They showed they call it the core, COR. Basically, it's the bounciness of the baseball. It's a lot of validity to what's happening out there, and it's kind of crazy to look at the correlation to these baseballs and how the baseballs have changed and how all of a sudden you're looking at just the craziness of the home runs. Now, you could use the old balls, and he points out like Aaron Judge is still going to hit a home run 440 feet. That's not going to change with him. That's why I wanted to point out. Now, Eric Sogard, he might not be hitting home runs. This is what these balls are doing. So it's really cool. The part I want to know, and he kind of hints at it, but kind of doesn't. Did MLB knowingly do this to make like more fans' interest? is what I want to know. Kind of like how, they turned a blind eye during the steroid home run race. Is this kind of a, hey, let's do this to increase fans' interest because, runs equal entertainment? That's where I want to go with this, but there's really no straight answer. But it's pretty cool. I recommend it to read. If you're a baseball fan, you'll enjoy it. Just take your time going through it. It's really cool.
Yeah, my answer to that question is yes. I don't think it is. What they did in the second half of 2015. 1998, when McGuire and Sosa were going at it, that was the height of baseball. They brought baseball back. Whether you're for steroids or not, and in my opinion, they're both probably not Hall of Famers because they're one-trick ponies for the most part in that era. And then just to kind of, again, boring, but you mentioned the higher core. Lower seam height was another thing, and circumference, which is crazy to think about, that if you just change the seam height, it's going to make the ball go farther. But I'm not a scientist, and nor do I pretend to be. So I'm not going to talk about it further, but that's some of the other, attributes to the change in baseballs in the second half of 2015 to now.
Yeah, and on that seam thing, and we can move on, but it just makes sense because a lower seam makes it more aerodynamic, which leads to more exit velocity, so it cuts through the air, blah, 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 more barrels, you get home runs. Chicks dig the long ball. That's how it goes. We'll move on to, we briefly touched on it last week. The MLB Draft is a little over a week in the books. Everyone's kind of had a little time to soak it in. We had a little controversy at the top that we broke down last week, and then, everyone's got their 2 cents on the subject. I'll let you kick it off. There's some big names that fell, like I mentioned last week, and we kind of were both on the same page with Kyle Wright, all the way to the Braves, how he's pretty much ready to rock and roll. What's your thoughts on some of the guys that are pretty darn close to making it to the bigs?
Yeah, there's a few articles out there that they wrote about it, and there's some names that are on pretty much all of them. The one that jumped out at me was, and I don't think I'm going to get this wrong, but again, I'm the guy that gets the names wrong in this podcast. J.B. Bukauskas for the Astros. That guy's everywhere. Yeah, so basically, if they keep him a starter, we'll look in late 2019, 2020, depending on how he does. But if they decide to push him hard into the bullpen, he's got closer upside. We could see him a lot quicker. We could see him next year, depending on, again, and I don't believe, and Bubba, you can correct me on this, I don't think they can trade any of these guys until the offseason. Is that still correct?
That's a really interesting question. I know for a fact before this last CBA, you could not.
Right.
But I know in the last CBA, they allowed for draft picks to be traded before they were drafted. Now, I want to say they still can't till this offseason because most of these guys, like, I'm actually surprised. I know that the slotting we talked about, there's been a bunch of guys already signed, like a bunch, even the big boys. But I'm pretty sure they have to report for the rest of this season. I think like once October hits, it's free game, but I am not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I think I know they definitely changed it with the draft pick trading, but he's the guy that jumped out at me at everything. I think the easy one is Kyle Wright. If he might even get to Double-A this year. So we're probably looking at next year. You'll see Kyle Wright. I would doubt that it's spring training. If he really crushes it this year, we could see a Chris Bryant situation where the Braves wait 2 weeks and then bring him up. But I think we're going to see him the quickest out of everyone. And then another guy that I saw was Jake Berger, third baseman for the White Sox, late 2019. I mean, this kid's got all the upside. They're going to lose Frazier. Moncada played third base for the Red Sox. He's going to play second base for them. And then the last one that doesn't jump out to everyone, at least for me, other than Hunter Green, Mackenzie Gore, Brandon McKay, is everyone is high on Pavin Smith for the Diamondbacks. They took him at 7. Goldschmidt is a free agent after 2018. Are they going to give him all the money? I would, but it's a possibility that he may leave. They may trade him next year. Who knows what they do? They're having a great year. But if he does leave, Pavin Smith is the guy that will probably take over for Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah, and there was one other guy that's going to be really interesting. He wasn't on the Callis one, and Jim Callis is, if you guys like draft picks and prospects, he's one of the best to follow. One of the Bleacher Report ones that we passed back and forth also, Berger, who was – did you mention Berger?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was looking something up. Totally missed that. Then, yes, Berger is definitely one that I can't wait to see in Chicago in that ballpark. My goodness, what he could do in that ballpark. Just light tower power. But like I mentioned last week, Kyle Wright is – I think – I'm not saying he's going to be the steal of the draft. I think he could be the early result steal of the draft. Now, come 10 years from now, definitely could not be the steal because, Mackenzie Gore is a great pitcher. You never know what the top picks could turn into. But for immediate impact on a mound of a rebuilding team, Kyle Wright could slot into that rotation real soon, really, really soon. They're already saying Double-A next, like by the end of this year, which is insane for a draft pick. But that's some big boy stuff. The one that surprised me that you mentioned was the talk of the kid for the D-backs. That one took me by surprise. It makes sense. It makes a ton of sense because we've mentioned on previous episodes that they might be into trading like Greinke or Pollock or something to start a rebuild. So when, Goldie's a free agent, like you were saying, that makes sense. I just didn't see it coming, but it's quite a downside when you're comparing a guy to John Olerud to replace Paul Goldschmidt, but hey, it's baseball, I guess. But and outside of that, it did shock me. The number one guy in Callis' list is this JB Bukakis guy that I feel so bad because the Bukaki jokes are going to be so bad for him.
I'm going to put it out there, Bubba. I think they're already out there. I would think that even before he got drafted.
That's rough. Like just when we started reading these articles the last few days for this, I was like, oh man. But I didn't even think about it. And we've talked many times how the Astros need arms. This just what the Astros need, more depth in the minor leagues. Just more depth. It's crazy. These are the guys we're thinking we're going to see real soon. What are some of the kind of late round steals, sleepers we can look forward to? Maybe not this year, maybe not in the next year or two, but down the road that, the Mike Piazzas of the world, even though we only have 50 rounds these days, what are we looking at out of this draft?
Yeah, and of course, you go with yours first because, of course, my page here, I had a few is just closed, so.
No worries. Well, is this going to happen to me too now? Of course it is.
Well, let's transition here, and we'll move back to that. The top five drafts for Jim Callis was Twins, Reds, Pirates, Brewers, Blue Jays. A couple things here. Twins and Reds are obviously easy. I mean, he does mention a few other supplemental round picks, second round picks, but Twins took Royce Lewis, Reds took Hunter Green. They're going to let Hunter Green pitch at first as a starter, it sounds like, but reliever potential there, which kind of sucks it too if you think about that. I mean, having a great closer is obviously awesome, but you want to get a starter there if possible. One thing about the Pirates that jumped out at me was they took 4 high schoolers, which should be great when they are ready to really compete in 2022 because they need to rebuild pretty soon because it's Garrett Cole, Kutch, Marte suspended. So that one really jumped out at me. And then with the Brewers, I think I mentioned him even before the draft, was Keston Hiura, who was one of the best bats in the draft from UC Irvine. Kid's got a lot of pop. They list him at second base right now, but he doesn't really have a position defensively. He's just not great out there. He's a big bat, so it would have been nice to be drafted by an AL team. That way you could get him at DH and just let him hit. But Brewers took him. Brewers had a good draft. They're one of the top teams in terms of prospects too. After this draft, and even before the draft, we've talked about Brinson and Hader, for weeks and weeks. So they had a good draft. The Blue Jays was the one that jumped out at me. I mean, they had a great year. They had 2 picks in the first round. They did a really good job, and they need to restock that because they have a lot of questions too. We've talked about them a bunch. I pronounced them dead. They're now not dead, but not out of the grave. So that could still mean they're dead, but you understand what I mean. So that was a good thing for them. But hey, we don't know. There's 50 rounds. You never know. Jim Callis is pretty good. It's easy to put the Twins and Reds first, so you never know about those.
Yeah, no, you hit that pretty good. And like you said, it's hard not to put the guys that got the top picks up top. And the Twins did really well. I had Brandon on my podcast last week talking in Twins drafts, and I followed him during the draft, and he had guys hating on him because they weren't taking, the quote-unquote best available player, but they were doing it like we talked about for slotting reasons, for bonuses. And it's worked out great because then, like in the 3rd round, they'd get a guy where they could pay him a little more that shouldn't have been there, so on and so forth. And it showed by the end of their draft, they did very, very well to restock a system that wasn't completely depleted, but, for a team that's rebuilding, wasn't where you'd want it to be. And they did very, very well. Like we talked about last week, and you even said it, Royce Lewis has the quote-unquote makings of the next Derek Jeter, a great shortstop. You don't want to be compared to Derek Jeter, just like you wouldn't want to be compared to Babe Ruth, or you wouldn't want to be compared to Clayton Kershaw or anything like that. But that's pretty darn awesome, and you're going to be that for the rest of your life. The Reds, the Hunter Green thing, I'm curious. I was listening to a podcast the other day that brought up a really, really good point. This could be a steal for the fact that Hunter Green's camp, it's almost like they're like a boxing promotion. They wouldn't let him pitch for like the last 2 or 3 months coming up to the draft. So people could only evaluate him prior. That way he couldn't screw anything up or, look too good or too bad or whatever. This is what you get. This is Hunter Green. So now he could either go out and just be even better than expected, or he could be just, not good at all. Like, this is going to be really interesting because if the Reds did seriously draft him to be a pitcher and they don't care about his bat, which is supposed to be pretty darn good, this could be a really interesting draft pick. But he's, all things point to just awesomeness from this kid. But it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But, yeah, they did really, really well. The Pirates, as Cal said, did great, and I love what the Brewers continue to do. I am 100% on board with you on that one. We've talked how they're rebuilding well. For crying out loud, they're leading the Central right now. They're ahead of schedule. We don't expect them to finish there, but when you keep drafting guys like the kid out of UC Irvine, Keston Herrera, and just, Tristan Lutz in the supplemental round in the first round, my goodness, you're already getting guys that you could see. Herrera could literally be there if needed. I'm not saying he's going to be, but if needed, he could show up later this year. I would be shocked if he would. Like, that'd be crazy. But he has the tools. He could fill in if he had to today. But, like, they got guys that are real close to already making an impact, which is crazy. So, yeah. The teams that needed to continue their rebuilds did really, really good jobs. And, it's cliche, but that's what the draft is for. So that's pretty good stuff. Now, just real quick, Bubba, just a couple of guys that aren't really late round, but just to mention, Sam Carlson for the Mariners was picked 55. Some people saw him as a top 20 talent. So he's an 18-year-old kid and signability. I mean, 55, you'd think you'd sign. That's what you'll hear about with all these late round high school guys. I remember for the Red Sox, Lars Anderson, way back when we drafted him in the 6th round, he might have been a 2nd round talent, but everyone was saying he was going to go to college. So we drafted him 6th round, gave him a big bonus. And that's where the new bonus system kind of works, where, you can't just go give some kid in the 6th round. Now you can move the slots down if you want to, but you can't go and just give this kid $4 million just so he doesn't go to college anymore. He's one of the guys. And then the other guy, before we continue, that I want to mention is this kid for Texas. He's a stud pitcher, Hans Kraus. Okay, they drafted him pick 66. 18-year-old. He's in the mid to high 90s. He's 6'5".
they're worried about his funky delivery that he has, and so they were at worst he's a late inning reliever. At best, he's middle of the rotation, possibly even top of the rotation stuff. If they do get him signed, so those are two guys to watch out for there.
Oh, very, very, very good stuff. Let's move on to some opinions. We'll kick it off with the Yankees, who, they were lighting the world on fire, and then they went out west. Apparently, the West Coast is not kind to the Yankees. The Angels had their way. They got swept by the A's, had some injuries hit them. Aaron Judge didn't hit a home run in Oakland. That was, 3 games with no home runs is crazy for Judge. Before we get into that, though, some real crazy news. A guy we love that's near and dear to our heart, and it's really hard for you because it's a rival, but Gleyber Torres, their top prospect, Tommy John surgery. Thoughts?
Well, thank God it's his glove hand. It's not his throwing shoulder. So he should be ready by spring training next year. For his throwing shoulder, that would throw everything off. And, I saw a few people saying, well, it sucks, but, he's a young kid, we're fine, whatever. No, you have Chase Headley at third base. You needed this guy to come up and be your third baseman this year and probably for the next few years, because I don't see them getting rid of Didi anytime soon. I mean, he's been awesome. I mean, Cashman has done well with that trade. Before this 7-game losing streak, they took 2 out of 3 versus my squad, swept the Orioles and scored 1 million runs, 38 to be exact in 3 games. And then they went out, won that game 1 of the Angels, and then they lost the last 2 there. They got swept in 4 games by Oakland, and they lost yesterday to the Angels at home. Pinata didn't pitch terrible yesterday. The bullpen gave it up. Clippard's been awful lately. So the Yankees are in big trouble because Tanaka's been bad. Sabathia was really good for like the last probably 5 or 6 starts. He's on the DL, out 6 weeks. Montgomery's been fine, but again, innings limit. Severino's been great, but again, innings limit. And then Pineda, last couple starts, he was bad, out west. Like I said, okay yesterday, but still, he's got that ticking time bomb with the home runs. I heard you mention on your Quick Hits podcast about, the solo shots. So he's getting kind of lucky there, not allowing a lot of base runners. And, I talked about how Judge, really can't keep this going in terms of, the batting average and that sort of thing and the ISO. And he's come down a little bit. He's 333. I think last time we talked about him, he was 356. So still hitting home runs, but it's going to come down. Brett Gardner's come back to earth. He had a nice little, 4 to 5 week stretch. Holiday's fine, but they don't have a first baseman really. I know they're talking about bringing Tyler Austin up maybe. Greg Bird's shut down, so he's done. Sanchez has come alive a little bit. I'm not going to talk about everyone like that. They need Chapman back. The bullpens, Betances is going to be fine, but they're in trouble. Now the Red Sox are in trouble too. It's kind of it's a competitive AL East, but it's kind of flawed as well in terms of, our bullpen is overachieved. We're somehow the 3rd best bullpen in baseball. That's probably mainly because of Kimbrel, but the rest of the bullpen's been good. So this is a flawed division. I think they're in trouble in terms of, we put them out there and said, wow, they're going to go and run away with the East. They're up this, they're up that. Obviously 7 losses in a row to 2 very, very bad teams. 2 very bad teams. The West Coast trips are not easy. We had trouble with Oakland out there too. But I think they're in trouble. I think this wild card could get a lot closer. I think it's going to come down to the end, obviously, with the East. But, I think Baltimore's done. I personally think that. But Tampa Bay, your darling, and Toronto can come up the back end there, make it maybe a 4-team race if we continue to backslide. But I think they're in big trouble and they're not as good. And I hope Yankee fans understand you should not be trading these young guys to go for this year. You are not winning the World Series this year. Okay? You are not. You are way overachieving. And it's not even a question. Cashman's done a good job, but you are overachieving. And I'm just going to say this is the Red Sox division. Hopefully, if Eduardo Rodriguez comes back and Price can just give us, like I said, they're in trouble. Bubba, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to make a statement so everyone doesn't think this was Red Sox bias here, that I do agree with everything Mo said, because we mentioned this in the preview that neither one of us thought the Yankees were ready for this. They're in rebuild mode, and their young kids are playing out of their mind right now. Who in God's earth thought Aaron Hicks was going to be this good? Like, really? I always thought he was going to be a good ball player eventually when he was with the Twins, and he never developed, but not this. Like, goodness gracious. Aaron Judge is out of his mind. There is going to be regression. There will be regression. He's going to have like a bad month, and everyone's going to just panic like the world is ending, like Superman found his kryptonite, and they're not going to know what to do. Sanchez is playing great, no doubt about it. Look at, Headley's had a horrible month. There's just so much. Castro's playing. They're so far and away playing over their heads. They're a good ball club. They're just a few years ahead. They need Torres coming up. They've got some youngsters in the system. Frazier. They're going to sign Bryce Harper down the road. Then Mo's going to sweat. Like, Mo's enjoying his time now, people. Let him do it. The Yankees' time is a few years from now, not this year. Enjoy it while you can. If they sneak into a wild card, hey, you never know. The playoffs, weird things happen. Ask the Giants. But I am not surprised by this slide at all. Pineda pitched out of his mind for a while. What's happening now is a little bit more like Pineda's doing. Severino's pitching great. You got to expect some hiccups there. Same with Montgomery. They're getting young pitchers to pitch really, really well. Come on, CC Sabathia, are you kidding me? Like, no. He's a 4 ERA guy, not a 3 ERA guy. There's just so many things that have gone their way all at the same time. It's the perfect storm for success that cannot last 6 months of a baseball season. That is why baseball is great, because it's such a long season where things regress to the norm and it works out great, except for like one team that can ride hot and win the World Series every once in a while. Usually that doesn't happen, and the best teams win because they're the best teams. That is usually what happens. So I just, I'm not trying to be a Yankees hater at all. I like the team. I've said that many times. I like the way they're rebuilding. They just – the fall is going to happen. I just hope it doesn't happen too fast where everyone wants to jump off the Empire State Building. But it's going to happen, and if they don't make the playoffs, don't be surprised. It's the facts of the matter.
Well, number one, I'm going to use this and just laugh at it. But the last week, Aaron Judge 222, 6 for 36, or 6 for 33 in terms of plate appearances, but for Fangraphs. But yeah, 222 in the last week, going to regress. Their year is 2019 because they had Teixeira's contract gone last year. I believe CC's done this year. A-Rod's $30 million is gone, so they're losing so much money. The only contract that will kill them in the next few years is Ellsbury, and I laughed at that when they signed him way back when. Their year should be 2019 because they'll have all that money to spend on Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, and they need a pitcher because Pineda, I think, is a free agent after this year too. So they rebuild that rotation as well. But they're set up perfectly for 2019, exactly when we don't have David Price. So maybe we'll be set up too. But no, seriously, in all seriousness, they're set up for 2019. The Yankees fans need to be patient. Cashman's done a good job. Enjoy what you have now because this team is not a World Series contender. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Yep.
Now let's go to your squad out west. The Giants. It's been terrible for you. I know it has, some unluckiness with Bumgarner, but I think even if he was here, it would probably it would be better. But I'm not sure that you'd be close. Maybe you'd be closer to 500. Obviously, you'd probably be like something like 33-40, maybe 34-39. But you're still way out in the West. I got a couple questions. We're going to start off like this. I know I don't need to ask you how bad it's been, and I don't need to ask you any of that because it's blatantly obvious. Who they're obviously going to sell. Who are they going to trade first? And then we'll go through together where we think they might land.
Okay. The two for sures that need to go, the one no matter what has to go, Johnny Cueto, he better not be on this team after the trade deadline. I swear to God, if Sabian does not trade this man, I know people praise him for the years we've won World Series, but let's not forget the many, many, many horrible he's made, like horrific roster moves he's made. Let's not forget, I know Zach Wheeler's had a lot of bad hiccups in his career, and he's pitching okay this year. And even if he doesn't ever succeed, that trade for Carlos Beltran was still horrible. Just dumb. Trading away Bickford, who, just got busted for PEDs. He was our number one pitching prospect, and I saw him in single A last year right before he got traded, and he had pure filth. He's in the Brewers system. Watch for that kid. Oh, yes. Not good. But Cueto, he can opt out after this year, and he's already blatantly said he wants to end his career in an American League team. AKA, he wants to play in the American League next year. So trade him. Get something for him before he just walks out the door where we can't get compensation picks starting next year thanks to the new CBA. Don't be an idiot, Sabian. Get something.
Don't bring Nick Saban into this.
Well, I hate him too because that's the whole Miami Dolphins thing. Don't get me started there. Drew Brees, Dante Culpepper. Don't rehash that.
Yes, I know. This is a baseball podcast, probably not NFL.
Yes, sorry. Eduardo Nunez. I like the guy. I really do. I was happy when they got him. That wasn't the worst trade in the world. We gave up a little bit of talent, but look, Mejia was a part of that deal. Am I really worried about losing Mejia? No. There's some other young talent, sure. Nunez is good. I really like the guy. If we were contending, he'd be a great piece of the puzzle. We're not contending this year. Likely not contending the next couple of years unless we go and sign a lot of guys, which the Giants just don't do because we have to keep paying the young guys that do produce, and that's just the way the Giants work. They're not like the Yankees and the Red Sox that buy more than they produce lately. Not all the time. I don't want to say all the time, but lately. So Nunez just doesn't work at the moment. He's a good ball player that I think can fetch a good return. And he can help a lot of teams out due to his versatility, which makes him a nice trade asset. I think the fact that they sent Arroyo down, I know he was slumping, but he wasn't slumping that bad. And the only way young kids are going to get better is by playing in the bigs. And when you're losing, why not play the damn kid? So I think the fact that they sent him down and brought rookies up to play the outfield and put Nunez at third, a.k.a. showcase him to trade him. Because he's not an outfielder. He's an infielder, third base, shortstop, whatever. Nunez is next on the list. Now, if you want to get really dicey, I have no problem with this move. I've had a lot of Giants people that I talk to cuss me for this. I have no problem trading our cheerleader, Hunter Pence. No problem at all. Because people need to really sit back and get realistic of the Giant pitcher, no pun intended, that this literally is not going to be a one-year thing, guys. This is like a rebuild. This is what other teams are doing. Rock bottom has happened. This is what is happening right now. If he could turn this around and we are competitive next year, it'll be like a David Copperfield masterpiece. This is going to take a few years, and Hunter Pence can bring multiple pieces. Multiple. We're not talking one or two. We're talking multiple. So if that's something that can happen, I am all for it. The bad part is he's playing like crap. So it's hard to trade crap and get, diamonds. It's not just, it's tough. Those are my three big pieces because really what else do we have that's really tradable? Not much. Maybe Belt in a hitter's ballpark because if you want to nerd out, there's a Fangraphs article that shows he's almost equivalent to Joey Votto in a lot of the stats. Just the ballpark kills him. But no, and that's the response I get from everybody. That's the response. But so I guarantee he hits 25 plus in like Great American Ballpark. But those are the three main pieces that I see going. What do you got?
Well, Belt, I mean, obviously it's an extreme one. They're not trading him. I mean, he goes to $17 million next year. I think Cueto, you nailed it. That's the obvious one, especially with the opt out after this year. You have to trade him. I don't know. The AL thing must be because he doesn't want to hit. That's the only reasonable explanation for him to go to the AL because
Sorry. It is really weird. Even if it's the hitting thing, it's bizarre because he was not that good in Kansas City.
Right. Right. I mean, he helped them win a World Series. I mean, he wasn't the ace they expected, but he did pitch well enough to do it. But yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I think the thing I think rebuild's the wrong word. I think it's retool. Now, I know your farm system isn't great. We've got to start with that. So that's got to happen. Maybe some international free agents can come in down the road. You can kind of start with that. But you're probably going to buy out Matt Cain. He's not going to make it to 200 innings. So you're going to buy him out. The Hunter Pence one is interesting. You could trade him. You'd have to eat that money next year, I would assume, or at least 2/3 of it, $18.5 million. Would think you'd have to eat at least 12. I think the one that you didn't bring up that is the most interesting one, Nunez is obvious too. Matt Moore, I think you're going to pick up that option next year, even though he sucked, because it's $9 million, and it's still fine for a starting pitcher because you need it.
Yep.
I think the interesting one you missed is Mark Melancon. He has an opt-out after next year. Your bullpen sucks, but at the same time, guess who needs a bullpen guy? The Nationals. Okay? They need the closer back. So why not rob them of the rest of their farm system? Mike Rizzo has to do it. If everyone watched or heard about the Max Scherzer game today, he literally could not, even though he was still at 97, you could tell he couldn't pitch anymore. His legs were done. Okay? The no-hitter was unlucky. He still should have got through that inning if Lynn catches the ball. But if you have a bullpen, you have a closer, you take Scherzer out there and you bring in your closer to get a 4-out save or any setup guy. But they couldn't do it. So I think Mark Melancon is the guy that could be sneaky that Sabian could rob someone for. And I think the someone, it's not Colorado, it's not LA, maybe Arizona, but they don't have anything. It's Washington. You go get yourself Robles, you go get yourself a couple other of their guys, and you just take away the rest of their system. I don't think Boston is realistic because, number one, he pitched terrible there. And number two, I just don't think we're going to be trading. We've just got to hope that Carson Smith comes back. I think Melancon is the guy that you missed that is a sneaky trade candidate when he can opt out next year.
If I can understand that, because what's the point of having a closer if you can't win a game anyways? I see where you're going. They just called up Kyle Crick, who was one of our top draft picks years back, was a starter. They moved him to closer in AAA, and he was phenomenal this year. So they sent Law down and brought him up. You could give him a shot in the back end as just to see what he has the rest of the year. You have to get Victor Robles if you're doing it, though. You have to.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's Robles, it's Soto, it's Keyboom, it's Fede. It's whoever you can get for him. You just do it because they need. You got to beat Rick Hahn to that punch. I mean, that's if you're saying rebuild, Bubba, that's the home run move you make to begin that rebuild.
Because I got two things on that though. Because if Rizzo's willing to give up those pieces. I'll ask both these first. A, why hasn't Rick Hahn got that move done yet? And B, if this is a retool, as you say, not a rebuild, which I can get behind. I see where you're going with that because in reality, they still have like 6 or 7 guys in the lineup that are still going to be there and good. And, the pitching staff's not that far off. It's the bullpen's been real bad and blah, blah, blah. If it's a retool, not a rebuild, whoever they trade for, even if their prospects have to be ready by next year. So Those are my two questions.
Well, the Nationals guys won't be ready by next year, maybe late next year. I mean, two of the guys, Soto and Keyboom, again, I hope I got that name right. I mean, Soto's at at low A, and Keyboom's at A. So Robles is at high A, maybe double A by the summer, double A next year. So that's not what you're going to do. In the first question, Rick Hahn hasn't done anything because he thinks, and he's probably right, because they probably won't trade Melancon. He thinks Robertson's the only guy. So there's no need to rush a move. He doesn't need to make that move. The Nationals do. So when Mike Rizzo calls him, maybe he'll fly to Chicago and beg him, like to give him Robles for the entire system. Okay. And now they have Seth Romero too. So if we're talking, you can trade those picks, maybe Seth Romero's in the picture too. So that's what I think. I don't think Rick Hahn needs to make a move in mid-June, when we're a month away. He doesn't need to force anything because he knows where he is. He knows where he's at. They're playing pretty good baseball for being young. He can wait on these guys and hope that everyone comes to him and says, all right, it's time.
Okay, let's take a look. We can come back to the Giants here in a minute, but we have something going here I want to run with. If not Melancon, if not Robertson, because the Nats need a closer. We've established this almost every episode we've talked on this. So if we mentioned Kelvin Herrera, I saw an article the other day where they started looking at, setup men around the league. Do you think that might be a more feasible option? Because the Nats have always said we're not going to give up Robles. But my goodness, they've been so bad. Like you mentioned, even today's game was dreadful. That come the postseason, do you trust trading for a setup man to be your closer? Or do you just say, screw it, and I'm trading these guys because we have to win these goddamn playoff games?
Yeah, I think the only guy that might be in line, I mentioned him a few weeks ago, is Brad Hand with San Diego. I think that might be the only guy that you make an exception for. I don't think Anthony Swarzak is the guy. He's maybe a piece where you could get for one of your lower prospects that will help your bullpen. But I think you got 2 years left. That's what the Nationals have. Now they have money. So when I say 2 years left, I mean Bryce Harper 2 years left, and Max Scherzer's in his prime. So you have to push it now and next year. So you go get David Robertson because, well, number one, it's Melancon with the 2 year window because again Melancon can opt out. But in terms of Robertson, I would think, and let me just confirm, I think he has 2 years left as well. So I think that would be okay. And this is good radio here for our listeners. So I believe that Robertson has 2 years left as well. And yeah, he does. So he's cheaper. So he's $12 million the rest of the year. He's $13 million next year. So there's your 2 year window, home run. You're gonna have to give up Robles. You have to. I don't think there's any way that you can get that done. And Nationals fans, if I was a Nationals fan, I would, even though it sucks to give up the farm, I would never forgive Mike Rizzo if he didn't go all out with this team. I would never be able to forgive him. He should be fired on the spot if he doesn't go all out with this team.
Well, yeah, they already ruined it once when they let Strasburg sit the first time. Now you have another chance. It'd be horrible. Exactly. Now you have they need to start getting okay with the fact of letting Robles go because Soto is legit. And like you said, you got a 2 year window. By year 3, Soto might be ready to play in the bigs. So he can step in anyways. The other slightly to extremely dumb wild card option that I say slightly because Dusty Baker does many dumb things. He tried Joe Nathan. We just saw Francisco Rodriguez and Neftali Feliz get released. Any options there?
Yeah. I mean, why not pick up Sam Dyson? Why not pick up Sam Dyson, right? I mean, why not do that?
Because my Giants got him.
Sup? I know. I just wanted to bring that up again. That's all.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. That's why we can trade Melancon. We got another closer. Did you see a World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, so trade Melancon tomorrow and then pick up K-Rod and then pick up Please, and you got the best bullpen in baseball in terms of stuff.
Fuck stuff. All right, tangent over. All right, why don't you take us into okay, let's move on to the NL Central. Chicago Cubs, we keep mentioning how they're going to break out of it. They're going to go on a tear. They're the best team in the Central, the best team in the National League, yada, yada. They're still a 500 ball club. Kyle Schwarber, he hits for one game, then slumps for three more, and hits like he's Kyle Schwarber. Rizzo is the best leadoff hitter to ever hit the planet since Brady Anderson. You got some things working for you, but a lot of things aren't. And one of the big things is that starting rotation that was so incredibly heralded last season with Lester, Arrieta, Hendricks, Lackey. They were just lights out. People were saying Lester, Arrieta, Hendricks were all Cy Young candidates. I don't know. It's sketchy. Lester seems to have figured it out lately. He had a bunch of first inning issues. He's kind of got it. Hell, he picked off a base runner. That's like front page news. Arrieta looks lost out there, and but his numbers peripheral wise aren't that bad. They've actually come down. What are you, Hendricks on the DL? What's your outlook on the Cubs? Can they get this fixed, or are they going to stumble their way out of the playoffs?
Look, I think ultimately they're going to win the division. We said it last week. I'm not going to back down from that. I mean, they have, again, we didn't mention this in the draft. They still have, if you go to Bleacher Report, they're ranking all the 30 farm systems. They give kind of a top 10 for each and a little overview on Bleacher Report just came out, either yesterday or the day before. They still have one of the top, farm systems in baseball. Now, they're not all ready. Jimenez is high A, De La Cruz is high A, Dylan Cease is A, low A, or just A. They're not close to ready, but they still have the farm system, and they still trust, their drafting and their international signing bonuses to make a trade for a starter. Now, what starter that is, I'm not sure. We've talked about Quintana. I don't think Archer's going anywhere because the Rays are in it. They're definitely in the wild card at least, and they could be in the – yeah, they're definitely in the – yeah, right, exactly. They could be in the AL East race too. So Lackey, he could be done, man. I mean, he had a decent start the other day. 6 innings, 1 run. So he hasn't had a blow up game. He had 1 5-earned run, or he's had a couple 5-earned runs, or actually now that I look at it, 3 out of the last 6 have been 5-earned runs. So it's not good with John Lackey. That's one. Number 2, we all know what Eddie Butler is. He's really nothing. Montgomery's been really good lately, but can he stretch out and keep that going? Arrieta, everyone's worried about his velocity. It's back up to around 93. If you look at Brooks baseball, the last couple, he's been around 93.2 to 93.7. So that's a good thing. We're not worried about that. Like you said, his peripherals are getting there. Lester will be fine. I'm not worried about him. Hendricks hasn't been good. Well, let's put it this way. Hendricks is what we thought he was. Rest in peace, Dennis Green. Last year he was amazing. Great defense. He's hurt now. Hasn't been great this year. So if anything's going to kill them, it's the rotation. The good thing is Theo has everything to get it done in terms of going to get a starter. Which one that is, we'll preview that in a few weeks as we get closer. The normal names are out there. Quintana, Darvish is the sneaky one. I hope that Texas would trade him because they're not going to win the World Series, but you never know what John Daniels is going to do. So I think ultimately they have Lester. They have that guy. I think Arrieta will get better. But 3, 4, 5, it's a question, man, especially when you're questioning, Arrieta at 2. It's just really Lester that you count on. Arrieta has to pitch better getting that contract next year. So I think ultimately they'll win the division. World Series, got to make a big deal to really get back to that World Series.
I definitely think they'll make the playoffs. And as long as they make the playoffs, I still think they'll be okay because I believe we've talked about it before, and I know you probably will at least agree with this statement, maybe not with the Cubs as a whole statement, but when it comes to the playoffs, you only need 3 starting pitchers. Now, when you have Lester Arrieta as your 1-2, and like you said, Arrieta's looking a lot better, and he's in a playoffs, you want that kind of just I don't give a shit out there throwing BBs as best he can when everyone's just dog tired, and that is Jake Arrieta, and that it shows when he's out there. Lester Arrieta, you have that. If they can just mold, if Hendricks can find any semblance of something from the past, which he might not, like you said, he might resort back to what we thought he was. But if that sinker can come back, if I'm real curious, the guy, my wild card is Montgomery. The guy has really, really good stuff. The question is he just a really, really good long reliever, which he was all year, like one of the best in baseball. No one really talked about him. It was always Chris Davinsky this, Chris Davinsky that, the guy in frickin' Arizona. I'm blanking all of a sudden. Archie Bradley. They were always talking about them, but Mike Montgomery was just as good, if not better, at sometimes. He's been extended. He's been looking really good. He goes 5 innings now. If they can keep extending him, is it something they look at and saying, okay, when Brett Anderson or Hendricks comes back, does Eddie Butler go and Montgomery stay? Does Lackey get a quote-unquote 10-day DL stint to get his mind right? There's a lot of ways to go about this because if they can just get one more stable arm and have 3 really good ones come postseason, the Cubs are still extremely dangerous.
Yep, completely agree there. Completely agree. Enough of the Cubs. Sick of the Cubs. Let's get to another team that we've been laughing at all year, and we continue to laugh at them. But I'm just going to come right out with it. When will they call up Ahmed Rosario? What else does he ever have to prove? I don't get it.
Dude, first off, if we could figure out the Mets, we could probably be the GM. Because that is – it should be like, the next Apprentice show with the Governor. You should win the job as the GM of the Mets because it's that much of a joke. It's unbelievable what they've done with that team. The fact that the reports come out that say, hey, he needs more seasoning in the minors. What's he have to do? Hit 500 and a homer every other at bat? You just called up Cecchini, who's a good ball player. I'm not trying to downplay the kid, but my goodness.
Hey, former Red Sox great, Garen Cecchini, okay? He was a top prospect, even though he could only hit for power for 2 homers.
Yeah, and he took Kershaw deep the other night, by the way. So keep that in mind. So I don't know. I really don't. It is one of the more baffling things which is crazy to say because when it comes to the Mets, what isn't baffling about what they do? I can understand Dominic Smith because you already have 4 first basemen / 7 outfielders on the team. But when you have Jose Reyes and you had Cabrera before he got hurt, and now you have Wilmer Flores, TJ Rivera, and now Cecchini playing your infield, are you telling me Ahmed Rosario is not better than any of them, if not all of them? For crying out loud. This is just horrible managing of a baseball team. And the scary part, Mo, as we talked about last week, they are 1 winning streak away from being back in a wild card talk.
Yeah, they have Lugo back. They have Matt's back. They got to just make it till Syndergaard gets back. DeGrom's pitching really well again. I don't understand. They've played this perfectly. He got over 700 at bats. Go ahead.
Well, I'll get to it later, but they had another middle infielder injury I'll get to later that he could have replaced too.
Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. But anyway, over 700 at plate appearances in high A, okay? Then he goes to double A, 237 plate appearances. They decide, hey, he's batted 341. Let's bring him up to triple A. Now he gets 310 plate appearances, and he's hit more homers this year than he has almost in his whole career. Okay, and he stole 12 bases, and he's only striking out 15%. He's not walking a ton, but he's batting 325. I just don't get it. I don't understand. I understand it's Las Vegas, with the power aspect. He's not going to do that. He's probably not going to be more than like a 10 homer guy, but you never know. I mean, he's 21 years old, so he could get to that 15 to 20 homer plateau. I just don't get it. You need a spark. You want to get back into the wild card race. You want to get back into the division race. I'm laughing, but their bullpen sucks in Washington, so you just never know. They could go on a tailspin another week or two. You got to have a spark, and this is the guy. And I don't understand what Sandy Alderson is doing. Maybe he's afraid that Ray Ramirez will get his hands on him, and he'll have Tommy John surgery as well. I don't understand this, but hopefully we see him in the next month. Super 2 is all done. It makes it, like I said, it makes zero sense.
Yeah, and the middle infielder I was talking about is Neil Walker, and they said he might be out for up to the entire year. Like, his hip injury is pretty darn bad. It could be short. It's a weird injury, but more than likely it's a long injury, potentially, like I said, season ending. So I understand if you don't want to bring a kid up for 2 weeks, but you have the potential to bring him up for the rest of the season. I guess he's going to get a good stint in the big leagues. This makes no sense at all, man.
Shortstop of the future. Shortstop of the future.
If anything, if you're going to lose this year, at least give the fans something to look forward to while the team across town has Aaron frickin' Judge putting on a show. Come on. You're losing all – you guys had the spotlight when you guys were winning, when the Yankees were struggling the last year or two. You lost it real quick. Really quick. One last thing. It wasn't on here, but I was thinking about it. I want to bring it up. It could be a quick debate, but I had to bring it up. I could not mention this. We talked Aaron Judge last week. Cody frickin' Bellinger, Mo. Cody Bellinger. He has 22 home runs in 52 games. He has homered 10 times in 10 games. Rookie record. The kid is hitting only 270, which is remarkable because unlike, these other guys like even Aaron Judge that are hitting out of their minds. Judge, I got him right here, was hitting come on, you jackass. He's hitting 333. So Bellinger's not hitting for the high average you'd expect, but he's hitting with power. He's 2 home runs behind Judge in 12 fewer games. 282 BABIP. This is somewhat, I'm not saying the power's sustainable, but this production kind of really, what have we got going here?
I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm in 4 season-long fantasy leagues, okay? One's a dynasty. 2 of them are keepers. I picked up Bellinger. I drafted Bellinger in 2 of them. I picked up Bellinger in my buddy's redraft league, and I had a shit ton of DLs, and I still do, and I dropped them because the news came out that they were going to send him down. So I needed a roster spot, and that was the guy I chose. And now I'm feeling the pain because of it. But I did trade him. I posted on Twitter last night a couple things. I traded him for Moncada right before he got called up. Or I traded Moncada for him right before he got called up in a 20-team dynasty where I'm in a massive rebuild. Huge. Number 2, 20-team. See, she agrees with that trade. 20-team, not to bore everyone because everyone cares about my fantasy league. My keepers next year, I need to pick 5. I have Goldschmidt, Correa, Mookie, Bellinger, Sale, Bumgarner. Okay, that's 6. That doesn't even include Paxton, who knows what he does the rest of the season. So if I don't win a championship in that league and win some big money, I'm going to be very angry, but it is head-to-head. But Cody Bellinger is a ridiculous. I haven't – and the sad thing was I didn't own him. I picked the wrong high-priced first baseman the last few days in DraftKings, which pissed me off. But the kid is phenomenal to watch. Thank God the Dodgers are getting rid of Adrian Gonzalez. I would hope that they just part ways with him. because he just can't play anymore. But kid's a stud. You get to watch him a lot more than I do because he's out west. Kind of jealous.
Yeah, I couldn't not talk about him at least briefly on this podcast because I know we're going to talk about him a lot more. Last question on him. It's a yes or no answer, or for both of them, actually, because I'm pretty sure Bellinger is not. Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judge, both All-Stars?
Yes.
Okay, because sometimes, it's sketchy. Even when Harper went off, it was like controversial about these kids making an All-Star team.
No, he has to be there. Has to be there.
I agree. And, I don't think we mentioned him last week. Bellinger, home run derby.
Ooh. As an owner of him, I don't want him there, but as a watcher of the home run derby, because there's nothing else on TV, I would want him there, yes.
Yeah, okay. Let's do a quick little prospect news. We got 2 this week. I'm going to kick it off. Bo Bichette of the Toronto Blue Jays. If you remember a few weeks ago, I butchered that brutally. He's not in the Arizona Diamondback system. He's in the Toronto Blue Jays system. If that last name rings a bell, the former Blake Street bomber Dante Bichette, yep, he's his son. He's in Single A, the Midwest League, just made the All-Star team. It's High A, or no, he's in Single A. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong part of the article. Absolutely monstrous. He had a 7 for 8 night the other night that put his average over 400. The funny thing about this is I was reading up a couple different things. At the very beginning of the year, this is how prospect rankings could be weird. He wasn't even in Baseball America's top 100. On their May update, he was only number 93. At that same update, Aaron Judge was only number 90. So take that with a grain of salt. He began the year as the Blue Jays number 20 prospect. Now he's damn near the top with Vlad Guerrero Jr., who we can talk about at a later time, who's also a monster and also a former prodigy to one Vlad Guerrero. Bichette is just crushing the baseball. His average down to 396 after hitting that 400 mark. His BABIP's 472, but I'm not even going to care about that just because he's hitting everything. A K rate of only 17%, which is phenomenal for a kid. Little power at 7 home runs, stealing 9 bases, 56 games. WRC plus a 208, which is bananas. The kid is phenomenal. He plays a great middle infield. They have him playing shortstop right now. I think he's going to be more second base. He's been playing actually more second base of late. They have him playing shortstop earlier this year. He's going to be more second base full time. He's much smaller than his dad. If people are picturing Dante Bichette, this is not the same. But if you look up some video on him, it's entertaining because he's got the leg kick like Pops, and that's kind of cool to see. But this kid's a phenom, and he's 19 years old. 19 and 3 months, so barely 19 years old. Little guy, 6 feet tall, second-round pick in the 2016 draft. Just awesome prospect. The Blue Jays have a couple really good prospects, about, I'd say 3 years away probably. But keep an eye on Bichette as he just keeps mashing the baseball.
Yeah, I would think that he'd be at High A pretty soon. Yeah, he's at A right now. I would think he'd be at High A pretty soon, and then the Double A is actually in New Hampshire, so I hope to be able to see him and little Vlad pretty soon, if not this year, next year, probably next year, I would guess. Second one, since we had so many, DL news coming up and different topics we're talking about, AJ Puck. What do we got? What do we got for that name? Puck. Yeah, like a hockey puck. We're just going to go with that. I don't really care. He just got promoted to Double A at a nice start, decent start. 7 innings. So he crushed Low A last year. 3, in terms of 3.03 ERA, but a nice FIP there at 1.93. And then High A this year, he struck out almost 15 batters per 9. I mean, that's just incredible. And the left on base rate wasn't good, so that's going to do well for him. 3.69 ERA, 2.10 FIP. So they're pushing this kid. This is another starter in a long line of Billy Beane starters for the Oakland Athletics. I would guess that if he continues to have a good year at Double A, they'll put him at Triple A next year. There's no rush there to bring him up. and then maybe we'll see him, mid-May or maybe after Super 2 next June. So watch out for him. He was drafted 6 overall last year. I mean, he's the next guy in a long line of Oakland A's starters, as I said before. Like I said, I'd guess he'd be up probably June of next year. Any others you want to mention?
No, I just want to mention one thing on Puck. It was really interesting what they were doing in Stockton. I got to watch them briefly in San Jose. They have a bunch of young prospect pitchers there, not nearly the level of Puck, but they were doing a lot of there's 2 starters that would be on the same rotation day, and they take turns. One would start and one would come out after him, and then the next time through the rotation, the other would start and vice versa. And so one would go 3 or 4, the other go 3 or 4. And eventually Puck broke off of that, and then after about, I'd say 4 or 5 starts, he got promoted. He's filthy. I briefly saw some highlights of his game in San Jose, and this kid is good. He was great in Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes it through AA even by the end of this year. It'd be a quick move. You don't see it that quick usually, but I wouldn't be surprised. He's that good.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. I look to try to own him in a few leagues, if not the end of this year, but next year. Let's get to the DL news. I'm going to go quick, Bubba, because there's a million of them, and I'll comment on a couple of them. First one's Chris Davis, oblique injury. They're looking for him probably after All-Star break. I mean, that's just not good news for the Orioles. The one thing that can help them kind of mitigate the bad pitching is a good lineup, and they need Chris Davis for power in that lineup, especially as it gets warm in Baltimore. JJ Hardy, wrist fracture. I mean, not missing much there except for the fact that you got Paul Giannis at shortstop, so definitely hit drop down, even though, Hardy's around 200. Brian Johnson's shoulder injury, that hurt us a lot. Hector Velasquez has been pretty good, filling in for that, but we need Eduardo Rodriguez back as soon as possible, and we need Johnson back too. A small one, Miguel Gonzalez. I mean, that just really hurts us DFS players because he was starting to pitch like Miguel Gonzalez knows how to pitch, which is not good. Victor Martinez with an illness, kind of sneaky one there. Who knows if they're going to rebuild there in Detroit? I would suggest it, unless Verlander can come back. But another guy there. Reddick, 7-day DL with a concussion. Shoemaker out in Anaheim, arm injury. That's not a good thing for him. Yankees, Sabathia, hamstring injury. That's terrible for them. He was pitching well lately. He really was. Really, really sneaky kind of 4 or 5 weeks of baseball. He's going to be out another 6 weeks, which is awful because that's sort of past the trade deadline there. So they have to decide whether they want to buy or not. You've heard our opinions on that front. Adam Moore in the bullpen, arm injury, and then Trashner to the DL with an oblique injury. Another guy we didn't know that he could find his oblique, but he is to the DL. Now to you, Bubba, with the NL DL news.
One last AL one I wanted to mention is Pablo Sandoval to the DL with an ear infection.
You notice how I left that out, right? Because I just don't.
Yeah, that's why. After the Giants segment I went through, I had to mention that.
See, it takes a little while, folks, for a couple podcast guys. He's been doing it a while. I haven't, to kind of go back and forth here. Now we're hitting our stride. Now he's hating on me, Pablo Sandoval. Guess what? I'm 30 years old. I've had an ear infection for 29 years, and I've played through everything. So I don't want to hear this ear infection shit. It's over with Pablo Sandoval. We'll talk about that later. I can't get my blood pressure up. Just tell me the DL news, would you?
Ben Zobrist to the DL with a wrist injury. He was going to take some batting practice today if everything goes well, which they think he's not that bad. He'll be back this Friday or Saturday. Matt Harvey, the Mets, a pitcher, injury. No, you don't say. He's got a right arm injury, stress injury to the right shoulder, out for several weeks, a.k.a. multiple months. Matt Harvey, the Dark Knight. Juan Lagares, this is kind of a freak injury. I'll give the Mets a slight benefit of the doubt here, diving for a fly ball. Broke his thumb. He's out for some time. They lost Neil Walker. Like I said, jacked up hip. He's going to be out for a long time. There's the Ahmed Rosario part we talked about. Colton wanted the DL with It's a weird one. It's a left elbow strain. He's right-handed, mind you. It's a left elbow strain that, they thought it was getting better, but it kept flaring up. And they got better, flaring up. So they said, screw it. They put him on the DL, called up DeJong, who's actually been pretty good for them. So there's really no timetable on Wong's return, so keep an eye on that one. Sean Kelly, Nationals DL with a shoulder injury, a right trapezius strain. More bullpen problems for the Nats. A tough one, Zach Cozart leading the National League at shortstop in the All-Star vote as of last week. Right quad strain. They think it's very minor as he was trying to play through it, but they wanted to take the smart approach as he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, so he could be a trade piece for the rebuilding Reds. He should be back pretty soon. It shouldn't be a long DL stint. And then Bronson Arroyo, DL with a shoulder strain. Who knows how severe it is? This could be like the Bartolo Colon injury all over again. But Bronson Arroyo to the DL with that one. And that is your NL DL news.
Yeah, and it's just a ton of DLs. I hate when we go through that segment, but we just have to. Something to watch for this weekend. We've done it before. I think we actually previewed last time the Rockies at Dodgers, but this is a big series, especially with the Rockies coming off a couple emotional games with Arizona. So this is a huge week for the Rockies. It looks like we're going to see they're going to see Kershaw. The matchups, I got them right here. So Friday we got Ryu versus Freeland. Saturday Kershaw Chatwood. Chatwood good on the road. So that's going to be maybe a better pitching matchup than you think. Sunday, McCarthy versus Marquez. Also, Marquez pretty good on the road. So that's your pitching matchups for the weekend. Colorado owns the series right now, 5-4 this year. But there's only been 2 games at Dodger Stadium. So Colorado continue that road streak going into this weekend. It's really a big series to kind of maybe propel the Dodgers back into first place. All 3 teams with the Diamondbacks, they've all been hot lately, especially in their last 10. So big series there. What do you got in terms of matchups? Who's hot, who's not in this series coming up this weekend?
Well, like you said, it's going to be a major series. The Rockies, even though the Giants aren't playing great, they had a couple walk-offs. You saw Arenado with the grand slam, or not the home run walk-off to complete the cycle as a big win. They've been big win last night, late in the game, late game win over Greinke the night before. They just continue to have big games. They have another one tonight and then a day game tomorrow against the D-backs. So they're fighting, as we keep mentioning, the 3-legged race in the West. Right now, Colorado's leading it at 47-26. You have the Dodgers at 46-26 and the D-backs at 47-27. So it's crazy how important these games are, and it's only the middle of June, and we're talking about this. So, yeah, you got the big pitchers. That's what I'm really looking forward to, because Freeland and Marquez are 2 of the youngsters where we keep thinking, how long can they keep it going? Well, now that this is where it starts heating up. Are they going to do it in Dodger Stadium? Let's see what they got. Chatwood is a really, really good pitcher on the road, so I'm looking forward to that Chatwood-Kershaw matchup. It should be a great series. Seager, 3 home runs last night. You got Bellinger swinging a hot stick for the Dodgers. Chris Taylor's been having a really good season so far. And then you got your D-backs, Blackman and Arenado for sure. Cargo on the road has just been dreadful. So, everything points to the Dodgers, but you can't count the Rockies out. As we've mentioned, they're one of the few teams in all of baseball that have been phenomenal on the road as they have been at home. So this is a big statement. If the Rockies are for real, even 2 out of 3 is huge. I'd say even just taking 1, don't get swept. And it's a big statement for the Rockies that they're still hanging around.
I completely agree. I think you would chalk that Kershaw matchup up to a loss. I think you always probably do that in a series. But if they can somehow take 2 out of 3 when they're facing Kershaw and win those 2 other games, yeah, that would be huge for them, because I think we know they're going to hit some sort of wall here in terms of their pitching. They're going to get John Gray back. That's plus. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. I think they're talking maybe the next week. That's huge. But like you said, you got to win that Ryu matchup. even though he had a nice start last time. McCarthy's been pitching well, so you need Marquez to pitch well there. And then, hey, never know. Maybe Chatwood can throw up his normal road, his road quality start, and they can be in that Kershaw matchup. I agree with you. They win one, they'll be all right. Don't get swept.
Yep. Simple as that. Well, good stuff, Mo. Good stuff as always as we wrap up another edition of Around the Bases. Any last words?
No last words. Enjoy the baseball this weekend. Definitely check out, as you'll mention, Around Bases Pod. You've been doing a real good job of posting that, posting all the home runs that we had. We've had some nice retweet numbers. Follow that thing, take a look, and enjoy the weekend, guys.
Yeah, tons of good baseball. We're in the heart of the season. There's really nothing else to do. You're not a WNBA fan. We understand. So get at it. Enjoy it. And thanks for listening. This is another edition of Around the Bases, episode 17 with Bubba Mo. We'll catch you guys later.
See ya.